Today I'd like to speak about the proposed Pebble Mine in western Alaska at the headwaters of Bristol Bay. Bristol Bay is home to the largest wild salmon run in the world and a prime source of income and work for Alaskans who live in that area. The fishery and Bristol Bay itself provide 10,000 jobs to Alaskans and over $1.5 billion in income annually to people and industries in that area. That figure from the Center for American Progress. I have a map in my visual aid showing the location of the proposed Pebble Mine above Lake Iliamna and at the headwaters of Bristol Bay, where many of those salmon end up spawning. I'm proposing in this speech and stating that the Pebble Mine project should not be allowed to be developed at the headwaters of Bristol Bay, and that it's too great a risk to take for the well-being of Bristol Bay. I have personally worked in both mining and fishing, and do realize that the parties wish to work together. There's no ill will between each other. But the Pebble Mine is just too large and provides too great a risk. Overall, the mine could hold reserves worth $500 billion, but that's not enough reason to risk Bristol Bay. First of all, mining wastes are very toxic. The process of mining involves extracting minerals from rock, and that releases sulfuric acid from sulfur minerals. And this acid in turn releases all sorts of harmful minerals and elements into the environment, such as arsenic, lead, cadmium. And these substances are all present in mine tailings, which is rock that has undergone the processing and become powder, and it's held there, it's waste, but containing all of these very harmful elements. These elements can enter the environment, and in the case of a tailings dam failure where the tailings are held, they can be released in extreme quantities and be very damaging. Mining has already contaminated more than 40% of headwaters in the western United States throughout its history. That claim from the Environmental Protection Agency. As you can see on my visual aid also, it shows that there are fish advisories due to that type of infiltration of these minerals. Currently in Alaska there are none, and it would be great to keep it that way. I have examples of 3 different tailings dam failures that caused major harm. One in Stava, Italy, killed 269 people and destroyed 60 buildings. That is a huge consequence. In Los Fraises, France, a failure into a river affected farmland and ruined jobs for upwards of 5,000 people that couldn't farm the land anymore. And in Kolontar, Hungary, a failure at a bauxite mine killed 10 people. And these failures do happen in the world, and it can be a terrible issue. Those 3 instances I'm citing from PBS. And also in my visual aid, you can see a figure of the dams proposed at Pebble Mine and how huge they are and how much tailings will be behind that. If that tailings enters the environment, it could cause a huge issue. In a report, the EPA claims that a tailings dam failure would destroy salmon populations in rivers affected. These failures could affect salmon populations in the Koktuli and Mulchatna rivers, and also into the Nushagak River population, which are major rivers leading into Bristol Bay and huge spawning areas for salmon. The chances of a failure stated by the EPA assessment are 1 in 2,500 or 1 in 250,000. Now those risks aren't high, but there is the risk. Now, a dam failure is unlikely, judging by those ratios. However unlikely it may be, the the damage done would cause irreparable damage to the environment, and we just can't take the risk. Even among mining companies and people in the mining industry, there's a sentiment that the Pebble Mine is just not worth the risk. Recently, Rio Tinto, a large shareholder in Northern Dynasty Minerals, which is developing the mine, gave away their shares of that company, and they divested themselves from the project. Now, these shares are worth $16 million, and they were given to the Alaska Community Foundation and the Bristol Bay Native Corporation Education Foundation. This comes after only a year ago, Anglo American PLC also pulled out of the project. These figures from the Associated Press. And this goes to show that large mining companies may not want to take the risk in the Pebble Mine, that there is risk there and they aren't willing to take it. Furthermore, mining companies need to work under IFC guidelines stating that they must do their utmost to protect the environment. Working under these guidelines ensures that they can obtain loans from banks. If they don't meet those, they fall into bad standing in the financial world, and mines cannot take that risk either. Now, shareholders may have pressured these mining companies, however, that goes to show a public leaning against the Pebble Mine project. Native groups in the area are also very against the mine and its development in that land. The Nunamata Alaikatia Council of 8 local Native corporations and the Regional Corporation of Bristol Bay Natives oppose the mine. Those figures are from Trekking Alaska, and it goes to show that commercial fishermen, sport fishermen, tourism operators, and even high-ranking officials in the Alaska government, such as Senator Ted Stevens, are against the Pebble Mine project. They don't believe the risk is worth it either. 70% of people in Alaska oppose the Pebble Mine project. That goes to show that there's overwhelming support for keeping the Pebble Mine project away from Bristol Bay. Those opposed to the mine may not have the same knowledge of mining or tailings dams, mineral damage as experts. However, the people of Alaska and the people in Bristol Bay are the ones taking the risk, and they will suffer if anything happens, so they should have the say. The Pebble Mine project poses a huge risk to Bristol Bay, its fisheries, and the livelihoods of people there. And stated throughout this speech, I've said that the risk is not worth it, and it clearly is not, according to many residents in Alaska also. I believe that no risk is acceptable for risking that salmon population and the livelihoods of those people. And I have a quote, also in my visual aid, from John Shively, the CEO of the Pebble Partnership, which is in charge of trying to develop the mine. This quote from Robert Woolsey of WCAW, Sitka, Alaska. Now, he says, "I've said many times and will continue to say that if you have to make a choice between mining and fish, you choose fish every time. There's no question about that. It's a renewable resource for commercial activity, sport activity, and most importantly, subsistence. So it can't be a choice. I agree completely that there is no choice and that Pebble Mine should not be allowed to be developed in the headwaters of Bristol Bay."